Iran Air Flight 655 was an Iran Air civilian passenger flight from Tehran to Dubai that was shot down by the United States Navy guided missile cruiser USS Vincennes on July 3, 1988. The incident took place in Iranian airspace, over Iran's territorial waters in the Persian Gulf, and on the flight's usual flight path. The aircraft, an Airbus A300 B2-203, was destroyed by SM-2 Mr. surface-to-air missiles fired from the Vincennes. All 290 on board, including 66 children and 16 crew, died. This event ranks 7th among the deadliest disasters in aviation history, 10th if including the 9/11 attacks, which include ground casualties. The incident retains the highest death toll of any aviation incident in the Persian Gulf. The Vincennes had entered Iranian territorial waters after one of its helicopters drew warning fire from Iranian speedboats operating within Iranian territorial limits. According to the Iranian government, Vincennes negligently shot down the civilian aircraft. The airliner was making IFF squawks in mode 3, a signal that identified it as a civilian craft. According to the United States government, the crew incorrectly identified the Iranian Airbus A300 as an attacking F-14A Tomcat fighter, a plane made in the United States and operated at that time by only two forces worldwide, the United States Navy and the Islamic Republic of Iran Air Force. While the Iranian F-14s had been supplied by manufacturer Grumman in an air-to-air configuration only in the 1970s, the crew of Vincennes had been briefed when entering the region that the Iranian F-14s had an iron bomb capability as well as Maverick missile and unguided rockets for air-to-surface. The event generated a great deal of controversy and criticism of the United States. Some analysts blamed the captain of Vincennes for reckless and aggressive behavior in a tense and dangerous environment. The United States government did not formally apologize to Iran. In 1996, the United States and Iran reached a settlement at the International Court of Justice which included the statement. The United States recognized the aerial incident of July 3, 1988 as a terrible human tragedy and expressed deep regret over the loss of lives caused by the incident. As part of the settlement, the United States did not admit legal liability but agreed to pay on an ex gratia basis $61.8 million, amounting to $213,103.45 per passenger, in compensation to the families of the Iranian victims. Iran Air still uses flight number IR-655 on the Tehran to Dubai route as a memorial to the victims. Background: in 1984 the war between Iraq and Iran had expanded to include air attacks against oil tankers and merchant shipping of neighboring countries, some of whom were providing aid to Iraq by shipping Iraqi oil. The Flight 655 incident occurred a year after the Iraqi Air Force attack on the U.S. Navy guided missile frigate USS Stark on May 17, 1987, which killed 37 American sailors. U.S. naval forces had also exchanged gunfire with Iranian gunboats in late 1987, and the U.S. Navy guided missile frigate USS Samuel B. Roberts had struck an Iranian sea mine in April 1988. 2 months before the incident the U.S. had engaged in Operation Praying Mantis, resulting in the sinking of the Iranian frigate Sahand. Tensions were therefore high in the Strait of Hormuz at the time of the incident with Flight 655. On April 29, 1988 the U.S. expanded the scope of its Navy's protection to all friendly neutral shipping in the Persian Gulf outside declared exclusion zones, setting the stage for the shoot-down incident. At about the same time, USS Vincennes was rushed to the area on a short-notice deployment, as a result of high-level decisions, to compensate for the lack of AWACS coverage, which was hampering U.S. monitoring of the southern Persian Gulf. Vincennes, fitted with the then-new Aegis combat system and under the command of Captain William C. Rogers III, departed San Diego on April 25, 1988 and arrived in Bahrain on May 29, 1988. As the Strait of Hormuz at its narrowest is just 21 nautical miles wide, in order to traverse the strait, ships must stay within sea lanes that pass through the territorial waters of Iran and Oman under the transit passage provisions of customary law of the sea. It is therefore normal for ships, including warships, entering or leaving the Persian Gulf to transit Iranian territorial waters. During the Iran-Iraq War, the Iranian forces frequently boarded and inspected neutral cargo ships in the Strait of Hormuz in search of contraband destined for Iraq. While legal under international law, these inspections added to the tensions in the area. Shooting down of Flight 655. The plane, an Airbus A300 B2, registered as EPIBU and flown by Captain Muhsin Razan, a veteran pilot with 7,000 hours of flight time, left Bandar Abbas at 10:17 a.m. Iran time, 27 minutes after its scheduled departure time. It should have been a 28-minute flight. After takeoff, it was directed by the Bandar Abbas Tower to turn on its transponder and proceed over the Persian Gulf. The flight was assigned routinely to Commercial Air Corridor Amber 59, a 20-mile wide lane on a direct line to Dubai Airport. The short distance made for a simple flight pattern: climb to 14,000 feet, cruise for a short time, and descend into Dubai. The airliner was transmitting the correct transponder squawk code typical of a civilian aircraft and maintained English-speaking radio contact with appropriate air traffic control facilities. On the morning of July 3, the Vincennes was passing through the Strait of Hormuz returning from an escort duty. A helicopter from the USS Vincennes received small arms fire from Iranian patrol vessels as it observed from high altitude. The Vincennes moved to engage the Iranian vessels, in the course of which they all violated Omani waters and left after being challenged and ordered to leave by a Royal Navy of Oman warship. The Vincennes then pursued the Iranian gunboats, entering Iranian territorial waters to open fire. The Asa sites and Asa Elma Montgomery were nearby. Thus, the USS Vincennes was in Iranian territorial waters at the time of the incident, as admitted by the U.S. government in legal briefs and publicly by Admiral William Crowe on Nightline. Admiral Crowe denied a U.S. government cover-up of the incident and claimed that the USS Vincennes' helicopter was in international waters initially, when it was first fired upon by the Iranian gunboats. Contrary to the accounts of various USS Vincennes crew members, the Vincennes shipboard Aegis combat system recorded that the Iranian airliner was climbing at the time and its radio transmitter was squawking on the Mode 3 civilian code only, rather than on military Mode 2. After receiving no response to multiple radio challenges, the USS Vincennes fired 2 surface-to-air missiles at the airliner. One of the missiles hit the airliner, which exploded and fell in fragments into the water. Everyone on board was killed. The event triggered an intense international controversy, with Iran condemning the U.S. attack. In mid-July 1988, Iranian Foreign Minister Ali Akbar Velayati asked the United Nations Security Council to condemn the United States, saying the U.S. attack could not have been a mistake, and was a criminal act, an atrocity, and a massacre. George H. W. Bush, at the time Vice President of the United States in the Reagan administration, defended his country at the United Nations by arguing that the U.S. attack had been a wartime incident and that the crew of the Vincennes had acted appropriately to the situation. The Soviet Union asked the U.S. to withdraw from the area and supported efforts by the Security Council to end the Iran-Iraq War. The remainder of the 13 delegates who spoke supported the U.S. position, saying one of the problems was that a 1987 resolution to end the Iran-Iraq War had been ignored. Following the debate, Security Council Resolution 616 was passed expressing deep distress over the U.S. attack, profound regret for the loss of human lives, and stressed the need to end the Iran-Iraq War as resolved in 1987. Nationalities of the victims: according to the documents submitted to the International Court of Justice by Iran, the aircraft was carrying 290 people, 274 passengers and a crew of 16. Of these 290, 254 were Iranian, 13 were Emiratis, 10 were Indian, 6 were Pakistanis, 6 were Yugoslavs and 1 was an Italian. U.S. government accounts. According to the U.S. government, the Vincennes mistakenly identified the Iranian airliner as an attacking military fighter. The officers misidentified the flight profile being flown by the Airbus A300 B2 as being similar to that of an F-14A Tomcat during an attack run. However, the ship's own Aegis combat system recorded the flight plan of the Iranian airliner as climbing at the time of the incident. The commercial flight had originated at Bandar Abbas, which served dual roles as a base for Iranian F-14 operations and as a hub for commercial, civilian flights. According to the same reports, the Vincennes tried unsuccessfully to contact the approaching aircraft, 7 times on the military emergency frequency and 3 times on the civilian emergency frequency, but never on air traffic control frequencies. This civilian aircraft was not equipped to pick up military frequencies, and the messages on the civilian emergency channel could have been directed at any aircraft. More confusion arose as the hailed speed was the ground speed, while the pilot's instruments displayed airspeed, which was 50 knot different. At 10:24 a.m., with the civilian jet 11 nautical miles away, the Vincennes fired 2 SM-2 Mr. surface-to-air missiles, one of which hit the airliner. After the attack, the Vincennes crew realized that the plane had been a civilian airliner. This version was finalized in a report by Admiral William Fogarty, entitled Formal Investigation into the Circumstances Surrounding the Downing of Iran Air Flight 655 on July 3, 1988. Only parts of this report have been released. The Fogarty report stated, "The data from USS Vincennes tapes, information from USS Ides and reliable intelligence information, corroborate the fact that, Iran Air Flight 655, was on a normal commercial air flight plan profile, in the assigned airway, squawking mode 36760, on a continuous ascent in altitude from takeoff at Bandar Abbas to shoot down." When questioned in a 2000 BBC documentary, the U.S. government stated in a written answer that they believed the incident may have been caused by a simultaneous psychological condition amongst the 18-bridge crew of the Vincennes called scenario fulfillment, which is said to occur when persons are under pressure. In such a situation, the men will carry out a training scenario, believing it to be reality while ignoring sensory information that contradicts the scenario. In the case of this incident, the scenario was an attack by a lone military aircraft. Iranian government account: according to the Iranian government, the shooting down of IR-655 by the Vincennes was an intentionally performed and unlawful act. Even if there was a mistaken identification, which Iran has not accepted, it argues that this constituted gross negligence and recklessness amounting to an international crime, not an accident. In particular, Iran expressed skepticism about claims of misidentification, noting that the Vincennes had advanced Aegis radar that correctly tracked the flight and its Mode 3 beacon. 2 other U.S. warships in the area, Sides and Montgomery, identified the aircraft as civilian. And the flight was well within a recognized international air corridor. It also noted that the crew of the Vincennes was trained to handle simultaneous attacks by hundreds of enemy aircraft. Iran found it more plausible that the Vincennes anchored for an opportunity to show its stuff. According to Iran, the U.S. had previously issued a notice to airmen warning aircraft that they were at risk of defensive measures if they had not been cleared from a regional airport and if they came within 5 nautical miles of a warship at an altitude of less than 2,000 feet. IR-655 had been cleared from a regional airport and was well outside those limits when it was attacked. Even if the plane had been an Iranian F-14, Iran argued that the U.S. would not have had the right to shoot it down, as it was flying within Iranian airspace and did not follow a path that could be considered an attack profile, nor did it illuminate the Vincennes with radar. Prior to the incident, the Vincennes had entered Iranian territorial waters, and was inside Iranian territorial waters when it launched its missiles. Regardless of the mistakes made by the crew, the U.S. was legally responsible for the actions of its warship under international law. Iran pointed out that in the past the United States has steadfastly condemned the shooting down of aircraft, whether civil or military, by the armed forces of another state, and cited El Al Flight 402, Libyan Arab Airlines Flight 114 and Korean Airlines Flight 007, among other incidents. Iran also noted that when Iraq attacked the USS United States found Iraq fully responsible on the grounds that the Iraqi pilot knew or should have known that he was attacking a U.S. warship. Independent sources: National Geographic Channel broadcast a documentary on this incident titled Mistaken Identity as an episode of its Mayday series. The documentary confirmed that the airliner was transmitting an identification friend or foe code for a civilian aircraft, but Captain William C. Rogers III in an interview insisted that he believed the code alone did not mean the aircraft was non-hostile. Captain Rogers described the attack as a self-defense measure to save his ship and the lives of the crew. John Barry and Roger Charles of Newsweek wrote in their July 13, 1992 article that Rogers acted recklessly and without due care. They also accused the U.S. government of a cover-up, but Admiral Crowe denied any knowledge. An analysis of the events by the International Strategic Studies Association described the deployment of an Aegis cruiser in the zone as irresponsible and felt that the expense of the ship had played a major part in the setting of a low threshold for opening fire. The Vincennes had been nicknamed Robo-Cruiser by crew members and other U.S. Navy ships, both in reference to its Aegis system, and to the supposed aggressive tendencies of its captain. The International Court of Justice case relating to the Airbus attack, the aerial incident of July 3, 1988, was dropped on February 22, 1996 following settlement and reparations by the United States. 3 years after the incident, Admiral William J. Crowe admitted on American television show Nightline that the Vincennes was inside Iranian territorial waters when it launched the missiles. This contradicted earlier Navy statements. The International Civil Aviation Organization report of December 1988 placed the USS Vincennes well inside Iran's territorial waters. Commander David Carlson, commanding officer of the USS Sides, the warship stationed near to the Vincennes at the time of the incident, is reported to have said that the destruction of the aircraft marked the horrifying climax to Captain Rogers' aggressiveness, first seen 4 weeks ago. His comment referred to incidents on June 2, when Rogers had sailed the Vincennes too close to an Iranian frigate undertaking a lawful search of a bulk carrier, launched a helicopter within 2-3 miles of an Iranian small craft despite rules of engagement requiring a 4-mile separation, and opened fire on small Iranian military boats. Of those incidents, Carlson commented, "Why do you want an Aegis cruiser out there shooting up boats? It wasn't a smart thing to do." He also said that Iranian forces he had encountered in the area a month prior to the incident were pointedly non-threatening, and professional. At the time of Rogers' announcement to Higher Command that he was going to shoot down the plane, Carlson is reported to have been thunderstruck. "I said to folks around me, why, what the hell is he doing? I went through the drill again. F-14. He's climbing. By now this damn thing is at 7,000 feet. Carlson thought the Vincennes might have more information, and was unaware that Rogers had been wrongly informed that the plane was diving. Craig, Morales and Oliver, in a slide presentation published in MIT's Spring 2004 Aeronautics and Astronautics as the USS Vincennes incident, commented that Captain Rogers had an undeniable and unequivocal tendency towards what I call picking a fight. On his own initiative, Rogers moved the Vincennes 50 miles northeast to join the USS Montgomery. An angry Captain Richard McKenna, Chief of Surface Warfare for the commander of the Joint Task Force, ordered Rogers back to Abu Musa, but the Vincennes helicopter pilot, Lieutenant Mark Collier, followed the Iranian speedboats as they retreated north, eventually taking some fire. The Vincennes jumps back into the fray. Heading towards the majority of the speedboats, he is unable to get a clear target. Also, the speedboats are now just slowly milling about in their own territorial waters. Despite clear information to the contrary, Rogers informs command that the gunboats are gathering speed and showing hostile intent and gains approval to fire upon them at 0939. Finally, in another fateful decision, he crosses the 12 nautical mile limit off the coast and enters illegally into Iranian waters. Radio communication: throughout its final flight, IR-655 was in radio contact with various air traffic control services using standard civil aviation frequencies, and had spoken in English to Bandar Abbas approach control seconds before the Vincennes launched its missiles. According to the U.S. Navy investigation, the Vincennes at the time had no equipment suitable for monitoring civil aviation frequencies, other than the International Air Distress Frequency. Subsequently, U.S. Navy warships in the area were equipped with dialable VHF radios, and access to flight plan information was sought, to better track commercial airliners. The official ICAO report stated that 10 attempts were made to contact Iran Air Flight 655, 7 on military frequencies and 3 on commercial frequencies, addressed to an unidentified Iranian aircraft, and giving its speed as 350 knots, which was the ground speed of the aircraft their radar reported. The crew of the Iran Air 655, however, would have seen a speed of 300 knots on their controls, which was their indicated airspeed, possibly leading them to conclude that the Vincennes was talking to another aircraft. Both sides and Vincennes tried contacting Flight 655 on several civilian and military frequencies. International investigations concluded that the crew of IR-655 assumed that the 3 calls that they received before the missiles struck must have been directed at an Iranian P-3 Orion. Potential factors: the ship's crew did not efficiently consult commercial airliner schedules, due to confusion over which time zone the schedules referred to. The schedule's flight times used Bandar Abbas Airport time while the Vincennes was on Bahrain time. The airliner's departure was 27 minutes later than scheduled. The Combat Information Center was also very dark, and the few lights that it did have flickered every time the Vincennes fired at the speedboats. This was of special concern to Petty Officer Andrew Anderson, who first picked up Flight 655 on radar and thought that it might be a commercial aircraft. As he was searching in the Navy's listing of commercial flights, he apparently missed Flight 655 because it was so dark. An Iranian P-3 was in the area some time before the attack, thought to be flying a classic targeting profile, and in some reports providing an explanation why no radar signals were detected from Iran Air Flight 655. Other reports state that the Airbus was immediately detected after takeoff by Vincennes AN Spy-1 radar at a range of 47 miles. The psychology and mindset after engaging in a battle with Iranian gunboats. There are claims that Vincennes was engaged in an operation using a decoy cargo ship to lure Iranian gunboats to a fight. These claims were denied by Fogarty in hearing before the Investigation Subcommittee and the Defense Policy Panel of the Committee on Armed Services, House of Representatives, 102nd Congress, 2nd Session, July 21, 1992. Also, the initial claims of Vincennes being called for help by a cargo ship attacked by Iranian gunboats have been ruled out. That leads to claims that the Iranian gunboats were provoked by helicopters inside Iranian waters and not the other way around. This might have contributed to the mistakes made. Aftermath. Inside Iran, this shootdown was perceived as a purposeful attack by United States, signaling that U.S. was about to enter direct war against Iran on the side of Iraq. In August 1988, a month after the shootdown, the Iranian government released a stamp illustrating the event, where the ship shooting the missile is painted with the colors of the American flag, and the map of Iran is burning on the background. In February 1996, the United States agreed to pay Iran $131.8 million in settlement to discontinue a case brought by Iran in 1989 against the U.S. in the International Court of Justice relating to this incident, together with other earlier claims before the Iran-United States Claims Tribunal. $61.8 million of the claim was in compensation for the 248 Iranians killed in the shootdown, $300,000 per wage-earning victim and $150,000 per non-wage earner. In total, 290 civilians on board were killed, 38 being non-Iranians and 66 being children. It was not disclosed how the remaining $70 million of the settlement was apportioned, though it appears a close approximation of the value of a used A300 jet at the time. The U.S. government issued notes of regret for the loss of human lives, but never apologized or acknowledged wrongdoing. George H.W. Bush, the Vice President of the United States at the time, commented on the incident during a presidential campaign function, "I will never apologize for the United States. I don't care what the facts are. I'm not an apologize for America kind of guy." Bush used the phrase frequently during the 1988 campaign and promised to never apologize for the United States months prior to the July 1988 shootdown and as early as January 1988. The incident overshadowed Iran-United States relations for many years. The former CIA analyst Kenneth M. Pollack wrote, The shootdown of Iran Air Flight 655 was an accident, but that is not how it was seen in Tehran. Following the explosion of Pan Am Flight 103 5 months later, the British and American governments initially blamed the PFLP-GC, a Palestinian militant group backed by Syria, with assumptions of assistance from Iran in retaliation for Iran Air Flight 655. Post-tour of duty medals. Despite the mistakes made in the downing of the plane, the men of the Vincennes were awarded combat action ribbons for completion of their tours in a combat zone. Lustig, the air warfare coordinator, received the Navy Commendation Medal. In 1990, the Washington Post listed Lustig's awards as one being for his entire tour from 1984 to 1988 and the other for his actions relating to the surface engagement with Iranian gunboats. In 1990, Rogers was awarded the Legion of Merit for his service as the commanding officer of the Vincennes from April 1987 to May 1989. The citation made no mention of the downing of Iran Air 655. See also, lists of accidents and incidents on commercial airliners, list of airliner shoot-down incidents, references. Additional resources, none wants to reopen inquiry into Vincennes Gulf location. Washington Times, July 4, 1992. Abstract, Senator Sam Nunn called on the Pentagon to probe allegations that the Navy deliberately misled Congress about the location of the USS Vincennes when it shot down an Iranian civilian airliner 4 years ago. Fisk, Robert. The Great War for Civilization the Conquest of the Middle East. London, Fourth Estate, 2005. 318 328. ISBN 1-84115-007-X, Marian Nash-Litch, Denial of Liability, Ex gratia Compensation on a Humanitarian Basis American Journal of International Law Volume 83 PA 319 United States dollars Vincennes Incident. Dan Craig, Dan Morales, Mike Oliver. MIT Aeronautics and Astronautics, Spring 2004, Assumed Hostile An Academic Case Study by Fo H. Hune, Summer 2003, Further Reading, Fogarty, William M., Investigation Report, Formal Investigation into the Circumstances Surrounding the Downing of Iran Air Flight 655 on July 3, 1988, United States Department of Defense, ASIN, B00071EGY8. International Court of Justice case concerning the aerial incident of July 3, 1988, v. 1, Islamic Republic of Iran v. United States of America, United Nations, ISBN 92-1-070845-8. Rocklin, Jean I. Trapped in the Net, The Unanticipated Consequences of Computerization. USA, Princeton University Press. ISBN A0-691-01080-3. Rogers, Sharon, Storm Center, the USS Vincennes and Iran Air Flight 655. A Personal Account of Tragedy and Terrorism, U.S. Naval Institute Press, ISBN 1-55750-727-9. Wise, Harold Lee. Inside the Danger Zone, the U.S. Military in the Persian Gulf 1987 88. Annapolis, Naval Institute Press. ISBN A1-59114-970-3. External links, Iran Air Shot Down at the Wayback Machine, The History Channel, ABC documentary film, Tragedy over the Persian Gulf on YouTube, Iran Air 655 Shot Down, Iran Chamber, Moon News Agency. U.S. Senate, Armed Services Committee hearing, September 8, 1988, a collection of U.S. government statements on Iran Air Flight 655, Tragedy over the Persian Gulf, from Chapter 9 of Trapped in the Net, The Unanticipated Consequences of Computerization by Jean I. Rocklin. Vincennes A Case Study, Lieutenant Colonel David Evans, U.S. Marine Corps, ICJ Case Written Pleadings, Iran and U.S. Cases to the International Court of Justice, U.S. Department of State Bulletin September 1988 Transcripts, July 3, 1998, President's Statement. July 4, 1988, Letter to Congress. July 6, 1988, U.S. letter to the Union Security Council. July 11, 1988, Herbert S. Okun, White House statement. July 13, 1988, Assistant Secretary Richard S. Williamson, ICAO Council, Montreal. July 14, 1988, Vice President Bush, UN Security Council, Sea of Lies, Newsweek, July 13, 1992, the official site of Holy Defense Iraq-Iran War 1980 88 image gallery regarding Iran Air Flight 655 from an Iranian foundation. Flight 655 in the context of Iran-US standoff Kashmir.